the college and career planning platform that San Antonio ISD uses to help students search for careers, search for colleges, look at scholarships, as well as help seniors track their college applications. This is a platform that we're using this year that we'll continue to use in the future years. Every single middle school and high school student can access either through class links or on the schooling's website by signing in with their Google account, with the student's SAISD Google account. These are two ways that students can access the platform. And the platform is essentially everything that has to do with college careers, scholarships, what to look for, what kind of job outlook some of those careers have, and a way for then seniors and juniors to start to do things in order to complete the college enrollment process. So one of the cool features of Schoolings that I want to make sure I talk about and is related to our conversation today, it's Schoolings has this ability to house scholarships. So basically, a staff member of SAISD can add a scholarship opportunity that they find out there. They can add it to the platform, and then students can immediately see by doing two things. They can just look up scholarships, or they can complete a profile and it will start matching them to scholarships within the platform. That's a relatively new feature of the platform, but it's one that we really like because it allows students to basically complete a survey, and then it pulls out a whole bunch of scholarships that the student can start to identify as ones that they can apply to. So this is just a snippet of what the actual view of Schoolings looks like, where you can see there's ways for searching, but there's also amounts of money, and it directs students to the deadlines, to the website to apply for the scholarship. And as a district, we continuously keep adding opportunities to the platform because we know there's a whole bunch of scholarship out there. And one of the biggest pieces of inconvenience about scholarships is that they don't all exist in one place. You have to sort of visit a whole bunch of different places. And we think Schoolings can help students just visit one place where they can track, apply, and continue the progress of applying to more scholarships. And so one of the reasons why I'm sharing that is because there's also an alternative way to track scholarships that we've been using in the past and we continue to use today, which my wonderful colleague Ashley shared with us today. And I'll prompt her back to talk a little bit more about that in the future. But for now, I think it's just the biggest sort of important point about scholarships that we want to emphasize is you can do this through Schoolings, and or you can go the old-fashioned way and do it through Google Sheets or do it through your notebook. And there are some key things to track about scholarships that we'll talk about today, but that you can see on this slide that it's not just saying did I apply or not to the scholarship. There's actually a lot of details around it. Just like college applications, there's deadlines, there's documents besides the online application or the paper application. There's transcripts to turn in or test scores from SAT and ACTs that students might have to turn in. Sometimes there's essays they have to write for the scholarship. And so what we've done as a district is tried to get really, really good at anticipating what are the things that students might need to complete, and not just hope that students apply and give them the link to go do so, but actually give them the information and walk them through what are some of the items that they need in order to get the scholarship. Because it's one thing to apply, it's another thing for us to really strategize on how many of our kids are really getting the money, not just necessarily applying for scholarships. So what we wanted to do today, besides just giving you this introductory information, is I really wanted to bring in the folks on the ground, the women in the arena who are fighting this every day with kids to make sure that they apply to scholarships, to colleges, to different opportunities after high school that kids could do whatever, kids could fulfill whatever post-secondary aspirations they have. And so today I have the pleasure of having a conversation with Ashley Cash, who is the College Fund Advisor at Young Women's Leadership Academy. And we also have Lucia Vasquez, who is the College Fund Advisor at Cass Tech High School. So these are, again, two of my favorite colleagues to have a conversation with. What we'll do is we'll just go through a series of questions and have a conversation about scholarships. Parents, if you have a question, you can either chat it, put it in the chat, and we'll get to it, or you can unmute yourself. There is room for interruption here. If we're talking and you really have a question you want to lay out there, let us know. This is partly why I want to bring in the experts to this conversation. We have some preloaded questions that we'll discuss, but again, if we're not really answering what you're really thinking about, just let us know. Okay. So I'll let Ashley and Lucia just briefly introduce themselves, and then I'll throw my first question their way.
Hi there, I'm Ashley Cash. I'm the college counselor, a college bound advisor at Young Women's Leadership Academy. This is my 7th year at our campus, and I served as the lead counselor here for 6 years, and I have been working in college access programming for about almost 15 years now. So have a lot certainly to share with regard to what we do here, and then of course what I've seen out in the community as well.
Hello, my name is Lucia Vasquez. I am the College Bound Advisor at Cass Tech High School. This is my first year working in a high school setting, but I have 6 to 7 years working on the other side of the desk in college admissions. I've had the pleasure of serving on scholarship committees, reviewing essays that students have written for scholarships, and so I try to apply all of that here on the other side of the desk with my high schoolers, and I'm very excited to work with our families to help make sure our students are as prepared as they can be.
Thank you for that. So I think rather than jumping right into scholarships, I always like to backtrack a little bit. And scholarships are really related to this just overall idea of going to college, right? If I wasn't going to college, I don't even need to be applying to scholarships. So let's start there. I think one of the places we want to start is, and either one of you can start this conversation. Why go to school? Like, why go to college and then spend the time applying to scholarships so you can actually go to college?
I don't want to keep jumping in first, but and I know we need to pause for translation as well. But for me, the way I speak with students about it, there's both the tangible and the intangible when we think about why should I go to college. There's the tangible in that we need to think about the monetary aspects, right? Going on to earn a wage, a livable wage, a salary, build a career, those sorts of things. But then we also have the intangible that going to college can provide, which is, doing something you love, building a career over time, and having access to additional benefits like great healthcare and career development over time, and paid leave and those kinds of things. In addition, again, to doing something you love, that is a benefit when we go to college.
I would definitely agree with what Ashley said, and I'm actually going to start using that tangible versus intangible. That's exciting. And also just the growth opportunities that students have when they go to college or any level of higher education are almost, you can't even count them. There are so many opportunities for students to grow professionally, for them to gain all of these networking opportunities, to meet mentors, college counselors, professors, advisors who really are in these positions who want to help students go where they want to be. And that kind of expertise, I think, is very invaluable. And so we want to help students get where they want to be ultimately. And frequently, higher education is going to help them go there.
And in addition, I think we have to look at our earnings over time, where having some sort of credential or certification or degree after high school allows students to gain additional, access really to higher pay brackets, positions for advancement, that they must have those degrees and credentials for. And so over that working lifetime, they certainly stand to gain more financially, certainly by earning those degrees and credentials.
Right. It's this idea that any kind of higher education second piece of paper is really what creates, I guess in a graph, it would be like exponential, right? It kind of goes up like that rather than maybe a high school degree in this day and age. It just kind of plateaus a little bit. And so I appreciate that because I think we often think about, well, if I can just go do this really quickly, then I'll be making 40,000, but you'll be making 40,000 for the next 10 years. Whereas higher levels of education, you'll be making 40,000 now, but then 80,000 10 years from now, kind of thing. So that's a good point. Yeah. Well, obviously, college is not free. So I think this is why we're talking about scholarships today. And if it's so important and so beneficial to go to college, one key strategy is always looking for scholarships. And so let's start really basic. Lucia, what is a scholarship?
A scholarship is basically funds that students do not have to pay back. There are a lot of different kinds of scholarships. There are institutional scholarships, which come directly from a school that that student has applied to. And then there are external scholarships, which are just kind of people out in the universe who want to give students money to go to college. And to reiterate again, this money does not have to be paid back. It's gift aid to the students.
So we hear a lot about this. So do parents have to pay to search for scholarships actually?
No, you should not have to pay to search for scholarships by any means.
And we've heard stories before of organizations that claim to offer scholarships. So as parents, how do I tell if the scholarship is legitimate?
I always try to do that searching myself too before I put any information out to students. But if they are loose on Google themselves, then yes, we need to vet things a little bit. So one of the things I look for is what is the information that the scholarship is asking for up front. So I want to see what is it asking me. I'm going to Google to see are there any other reviews about this scholarship program? Because there's so much about what's out there and people weighing in on whether something is legitimate or not. So before I start throwing my information in, I'm going to try to vet it myself by just seeing what else can I find out about this organization or scholarship program. A lot of times it is legitimate, but there are definitely times where you have to take a step back and be like, let me just double check. You can also, the students can ask their college bound advisor, is this something you've seen before? So that, they can weigh in and be like, no, don't do that. If it's something that they're aware of, be sure. We will certainly let students know about that as well. And while you shouldn't have to pay for scholarships, we live in a time where our data and our information, has a value as well. So we really want to just be cautious about throwing all of our information in anything that has the word scholarship on it. And I'll let Lucia weigh in on that.
Absolutely. Kind of a couple of things I'll guide my students through is just absolutely what is this asking of you? Is it asking, for example, I tell students very rarely is a scholarship going to come directly to you. So if it starts asking for your routing number, for your banking information, absolutely not. Frequently, if a scholarship comes directly to the student, it's going to come as a paper check, or it's going to be sent directly to the school that that student is going to. And so those are kind of some big red flags that I'll say, okay, legitimacy is in question here. And so also when in doubt, always ask. We don't know what you don't know. And I tell students, it's literally my job to find out this information for you. Absolutely. You're not bothering me. And so when we're verifying legitimacy of scholarships, when in doubt, ask. If it's asking for your identity, let's maybe wait on that for a minute. We don't have to pay money to get money, not how that works. And also I started asking questions of legitimacy, like when scholarships say, oh, we need a photo of the student or things like that. Just kind of, if it's a weird ask, if it seems like a weird ask, if you're reading it and you're going, wait, that's when you ask us.
Those are great points. Well, and it sounds like I shouldn't have to pay. Shouldn't basically put credit card information for me to access scholarships, and or anything that is feels private enough, like a social security number, and or even uh, I guess what I'm going is, so what would they ask? What is normal that a scholarship may ask for?
So they scholarships will typically, they're allowed to ask for your transcript if they want to verify, oh, this scholarship is for students who have a specific grade point average. They can ask for that. They can ask for letters of recommendation. And I tell students, letters of recommendation is you're asking someone to say very nice things about you behind your back. They're allowed to ask for someone else to say, yes, this student is deserving of the scholarship. And they're allowed to ask for the contact information for your high school. They're allowed to ask for the phone number, the address. That's what we call public information. That's information that we could find on Google anyway. So these are a few examples. I'm going to let Ashley jump in of what they're allowed to ask for.
Yes, I would say those same things, including, test scores if they require that as well. So those are things that, similar to a college application, that is reasonable to provide to them in order to have them assess the student's academic profile for the scholarship.
So I'm gonna plant this seed for now because I want you to think of a good story. But I know there's probably um, I think there's probably stories you might have seen of some really crazy asks or some of the biggest scholarship myths that you have heard out there. So think of that for a second. What are some of those things that you're like, yep, this is definitely crazy and not applicable to a reasonable scholarship. And as you do that, I think one of the other things that we often think about is if I'm hearing that I can go to my local community college for free, like that's something I'm hearing in the news or in an article or in TV. So why do I still need to spend my time applying to scholarships?
I think the students certainly have to look at what are their goals for after high school and what are they planning to do. And, the Alamo colleges specifically, they have certain partner schools. So they would need to make sure that their school is one of those partner schools for the Alamo Promise program that you just mentioned. YWLA is. So that does apply to my students. And then I also have students look at, what are you planning to study? I've had students interested in mortuary science or culinary arts, and obviously that's a good fit for them. But I also have students who have a lot of dual credit or college credits through AP, and we need to look at whether or not that is really the best next step. And I think for my students, I share with them also the most powerful statistic that really only about, I think, 13% of students who start at a community college actually go on to pursue that 4-year degree and transfer out to do that. So we have prepared them to be ready for the 4-year, and they have a lot that they're taking with them. So that's certainly what we're encouraging our students to do. And they have to look at themselves and what they're wanting to do, as well as what they've already done to determine if that's a good fit or not. And then, of course, we're going to aggressively pursue all financial aid options out there for students. And I'll let Lucia weigh in as well.
To kind of reiterate what Ashley's already said, the Alamo Promise is with very specific partner schools, and so my school is actually not one of them. And so we're always encouraging students to apply for scholarships. And so even when the conversation turns to, well, for us, community college may be the less expensive option, we're still pushing scholarships because when you're paying for college, it's not only tuition, there's also your textbooks. And then education costs can be very broad. And so if you're a commuter student, if you're driving to and from college, your gas money getting you to and from college, that can count as an educational expense. Your room and board, you still have to live. You have to live somewhere. You need to eat, whether you're eating on campus or off campus. Those can also be qualifying education expenses, and scholarship funds can help pay for that. There are different kinds of scholarships. Scholarships pay for different things. But that's one of the things that they can help. So even if we are going to Alamo colleges or the community college for free or for significantly less money, then there's still going to be other expenses, and we want to make sure students have the funds to pay for that.
Right, because there's there's the cost of attendance, and then there's the tuition within that cost of attendance, right? And so a lot of programs out there might help to pay for the tuition, but to your point, Lucia, you still need to pay for gas to get to school. You still need to pay for the books that may not be part of tuition. Um, right, like just, and if you're out of the city, you're not living with mom and dad or your guardian, you have to then pay for rent, and you have to pay for your own toothpaste and toothbrush and toilet paper, et cetera, et cetera. That's a good point. So you did mention, Lucy, a little bit about the scholarships will pay for different things, and so the general question always comes up about like you almost hear, and if you Google, that there's scholarships for just about anything. How true is that?
It feels very true. I've seen some very, very specific scholarships in just this year. And so when I was working in college admissions, we would always reference, is anyone in this presentation left-handed? There's a scholarship for that. Is there anyone here who wants to write a creative writing essay on how you and your friends would survive the zombie apocalypse if your school was overrun right now, right this second? Hey, there's a scholarship for that. There really is a different scholarship for everyone. And so I think that as college bound advisors, we do a really good job of locating and publicizing those scholarships for students as well. Those are the really fun ones I've seen. Ashley, have you seen any other super fun, unique ones?
Um, well, I've had students get anti-bullying or social media campaign related scholarships from my campus specifically. But I do want to just push back a little bit on this one, Dr. Sasadi, because I feel like sometimes parents will take that message and it kind of burdens the students as well to find these magical scholarships that may be out there. And I think there are a lot of unique opportunities, but there are some sort of foundational scholarship avenues that we need to be pursuing as well. Because some of these scholarships that are mentioned that are those very unique ones can be sort of national level scholarships, and a lot of students are applying for them, so then it can be harder to compete on that level. So I want to share that as well.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point, because I think part of my question is, while there are a lot of scholarships out there and for very unique things that students can really apply to, um, there is a concept of like, as a parent, you kind of want to think about, where do I really spend my time with my student to really apply to places. And this is sort of the same thing with colleges, right? If you have a really low GPA, for example, you may not be necessarily applying to Harvard, because whether that's a good use of your time is sort of what I think I want to relate to parents today, right? It's like, when it comes to scholarships as well, you really want to think about the more localized scholarships than the national ones, because this is about competition, right? Am I competing against a million students versus a million US students versus 1,000 San Antonio students? And my return on my investment of time would be better served with the 1,000 San Antonio students. To your point about foundational work, right? Like, here are the scholarships we always hit. As an example, we have the SAISD Foundation scholarships that are only for SAISD students. So that really limits the amount of time of competition, essentially. So while there are a lot of scholarships out there, I think it is worth pursuing any and all that you can think about. But at that time, it is really about managing your time, right? Like, we won't be able to have time for a lot of these. And so I might as well go for the ones that I have less competition on than the national ones. Anything to add to that, guys?
I do. I think we also, with my students, I draw the distinction between lottery style scholarships and the true competition style. And so I talk to them, it's math. For these no essay scholarships, just fill out my name, my school. You are one of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of seniors in the entire country, maybe the world, who are applying. It's like the lottery. And so it's math. You're one in a couple of 100,000. But for some of these smaller scholarships, like I have to write an essay, a lot of students go, oh, essay. Well, so is everyone else. And so it's going to be a smaller pool. So it's still math, but it's better math. Instead of being one of a couple 100,000, maybe you're one of 100, because especially for our local scholarship options that are exclusive to our San Antonio ISD students or just the city students, that's the true definition or distinction between a lottery style and then those true competition ones.
Yeah.
And I also want to just point out that, at YWLA, we had 49 seniors last year and brought in over $19 million in scholarships. And most of that was from the universities themselves. And so really, I think the first foundation of what students and parents need to look at is make sure your students have checked their application portals. They know what each college's scholarship processes. Some of them automatically consider them. Some of them have different scholarship websites, or maybe they're going to email the students to let them know if they're aware of things. So the student has to be checking their email and those portals for the university scholarships, because that's really where the bulk of our funding comes from for our students, is those university scholarships. So it's not always about going and looking all of these different places. We need to start with where we have applied, because they also have funds that they are giving to students. So that's sort of, for us, our baseline foundation. All my students have to aggressively pursue all of those things. And then the local scholarships. And then we'll look at, going for the national ones.
And as I understand it, so the scholarships that are given by the college, sometimes referred to as the institution. So the institutional scholarships, do I just qualify for them as a student if I apply to the college? Do I have to submit something separate to the college? Like there's a separate scholarship application, or is it the same as when I apply?
It depends on the college. And so it's up to the students to find that information and work with their college bound advisor who can help them, because we've had students apply just about everywhere at this point. So we are familiar with a lot that is out there. And I'll take Trinity versus UTSA as an example. Trinity does have a couple of special scholarships you can apply for, but they also have a big one internally that they're just going to give to you once they look at your application, versus UTSA, which has their scholarship hub, and students need to go in and fill out the general application, and it's going to tell them if there are other ones they can apply for. So each school, even locally, has such different processes internally, and the students have to really prioritize being on top of that so they don't miss those deadlines.
And another resource for students and families would even be their admissions counselors from those schools. When I was a recruiter, I would always encourage students, ask me how we can help you pay for this, because that opened up the conversation to talk about institutional scholarships, if the institution offered any automatic scholarships, if we knew of anything, any opportunities that were available. And so there are a lot of resources out there for students, and especially locally. The universities the colleges and universities here in our city that are awesome. They have a lot of opportunities for our students, both automatic scholarships and institutional scholarships. The way my expertise, I worked at A&M San Antonio for 4 or 5 years. So our general scholarship application there, it was one application for over 30 scholarships, and the algorithm just went through and found out who qualified for what, and then we would read the essays based on those particular scholarship batches. So that's just kind of how it works behind the scenes sometimes for some schools, but every school is going to be different.
So related to the topic of colleges, because this is a trend that we see, especially with the pandemic, a lot of colleges are not requiring SAT or ACT scores to be considered for admission to the college. Do you find trends in scholarship organizations where they might also be dropping the test score as a requirement to be considered?
So I'm finding that some of the local scholarships are a little slower to move on that. Some of them have changed that requirement, others have not. So it varies, and it's something where I do follow up with the scholarship committee, or if it's something that the student wants to follow up on, to just pursue and make sure we ask. I see that that's usually one of your requirements. Is that still a requirement this year? just so we can double check on that and not provide that information if we don't feel like it would be an advantage for us.
I found the same trends as Ashley, for schools that have, or excuse me, for scholarships that have taken away the SAT or ACT requirement. They've typically added something else in. So if they already asked for an essay, your grades and your test scores, maybe they ask for an additional letter of recommendation or for some kind of project or video. That's what I've seen.
Got it. Okay. Um, so I think part of why I'm headed that way is because if some of the scholarships are maybe dropping the test or not emphasizing the test just because kids may not have a chance to do it. I think your point that I heard was about the other pieces, and in this case, essays, right? Essays might start to become a more crucial piece of kids and how they write the essay so that they can get the scholarship. So I want to spend a little bit of time there because that is sort of one of the more complex pieces of the puzzle. You know, I'm a 12th grader. Actually, I'm an 11th grader getting ready to start to see what colleges I can add and what is required. You know, this is when I'm really interested in what I need to do. How do I improve my chances of getting scholarships by improving my essay writing? Like, what is good essay writing techniques that they could take away? And I guess to that point, what do these essays ask often that I need to know about?
So a lot of the general scholarship questions I've seen have been the very vague, tell us a little bit about yourself, what are your academic goals, how do you plan to achieve them? And then there's also questions where they say to tell the scholarship, you know, why do you need this scholarship? And so I ask students to really think about those questions, like the very broad, you know, tell us about yourself. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to tell your life story. You can you know, say, you know, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, but think about why do you really want to do that? And it feels so abstract because our students are 17, 18 years old, and so asking these really hard questions. And so I think that requires a little bit more conversation with our students, which is what we're here for, and really emphasizing, you know, answering the question. um, Making sure that you're writing to the question. And sometimes it's going to take multiple drafts. But there are resources that we have in district and in the schools. The students, English teachers can do exercises of practice scholarship essay writing and things like that. It's going to take a couple of drafts. I don't know anyone who's ever written something perfect the first time. And so just really emphasizing that it's a process to students and you're not going to get it the first time. And it's okay if we keep working on this, but that's why we need to start early. And so in this hypothetical situation where you're a junior, I'd say perfect time. Let's go.
Yes, certainly agree on making sure you're addressing the prompt. That is a big one. And now that the seniors, I'm just going to be honest and real here for a moment, you know, now that they've spent all this time writing essays for their college applications, I'm seeing a lot of copying and pasting for something that sounds like a similar prompt. And then I'm reading it and I'm like, this is not what this question is asking you. So, I mean, if you want to use this as a foundation, sure. So we just want to make sure if you're supporting your student, you know, are they answering the questions, and to encourage them not to simply copy and paste from something they've written before, but to really make sure that it comes across that they've invested in answering this particular scholarship's question. So just we want to be careful about any of that copying and pasting. And then I also find a lot of times students are reluctant to share some of those details that can really touch to the heart of the reader, because these are human beings on the other side that have seen the numbers for the student in terms of their GPA, but they need to get to see, you know, who the student is as a person. And so when they can, you know, I tell them, make a mind movie. If I'm reading this, I want, you know, I want visuals. I want to be in the moment with you. I want to, you know, feel the struggle that you are having or that you did have and that you went through. And so I often see a reluctance to share that, because they feel like they need to maybe talk about things as if, you know, it wasn't a big deal as much that they struggled, or, you know, didn't always have food at home, or whatever the thing may have been. And so I'm like, no, these are the details that are important for the reader to understand, um, all that you have achieved within that, you know, situation. And so I find students are reluctant to that. So it may take some pushing, which could be hard, you know, from the parent side, but encourage them certainly to go talk to their college bound advisor who can read those essays and help to draw those details out of them.
Yeah, and I think so. Thank you for that, guys. And I think the point that we're really trying to make here is that we probably need to let the people reading these essays determine whether what we write is interesting or not. But everything that we go through, or that your students go through, that you as a family go through, is considered interesting, right? To people looking at essays for scholarships or even college applications, and that is a true missed opportunity. Often, you know, we don't want to talk about our story, even though our story, relatively speaking, is way more interesting or shows a lot more struggle and persistence and grit that many other families don't have to go through. And without having it get extremely personal, it could get very personal. And even in instances where it might be things that you feel like if you shared it would put you in trouble. So, for example, you as a parent are undocumented, for example, and so you don't want to write that in the essay because you don't want to say you're undocumented. College applications and scholarship organizations are not going to report this out to anybody, even as you're sharing some really deep details. What they really want to see is the story behind the GPA, the story behind the test score, right? So maybe there is a reason why the test scores are so low, or the GPA may be lower than expected. And that essay is sort of the one place you can get really personal, right? It's just the one place where you can really say, here's who I am, here's who I've been, here's what I've gone through. And so we really encourage you parents to tell your students that even though they're 17, 18, maybe younger, they may think they haven't lived. They probably have. They probably have some stories to tell, and that it's okay, completely okay to share them to the extent that you feel comfortable. But that admissions and scholarships are not going to be saying this is too personal, or we really need to give this to somebody else. Is really for the purpose of the scholarship selection. And so, to Ashley's and Lucia's point, the more detailed and the more personal you get, the more you show emotion in what you're trying to do, the more you can talk to what you want to do as a student later on in life, and what you as a parent will want them to do. It's all of that is allowed, and all of that is actually considered a best practice to acquire scholarships, right? Because this is just beyond applying; it's actually getting the money. Am I wrong in that, guys? Is that kind of what we think?
No, I would agree. Just one more thing to add on: when these scholarship questions or these essays are addressing challenges, a lot of times we hear, when we're writing about a challenge, you want to write about yourself as the hero and not the victim. But if it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, or if you're still in that situation, that's okay. It doesn't always have to be very nonchalant, like, oh yeah, this happened, but we're working through it, and this really pained smile on paper. If that's not the case, that's okay. We do want, when we were reading scholarships, we did want to see, did the student grow, or did the student learn anything? But if it's an ongoing situation, we can see that student is still growing, that student is still learning. So just another thing to add on for those challenging, so the questions you ask about challenges, personal over situations.
And then also, I think there are ways to talk about hard things without having to label them so directly, which may be uncomfortable, like officially noting, citizenship status, or, income level. You can sort of talk around those so the reader definitely knows what you're referring to, and understands. And then also, on the flip side of that, I think, again, you want to use imagery and make sure the student is telling that story. So not just saying we didn't have a lot of money. Like, what are, 2 or 3 sort of visual examples? I'll ask my students, like, how do I know that? How did you know that growing up? Or do you know that now looking back, so that that can kind of be relayed in the story and just add that personal touch to what they're trying to share. And again, also, if they're still going through something, just leaving a little bit of that. How are you dealing with it? How are you processing it? Or what is sort of the hope at the end, right? Which could be going to college and being able to, go on to do more and help provide for your family, whatever it may be. Just making sure to add that little bit of ingredient there at the end as well, or somewhere throughout.
So again, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, and we're more than welcome the your voice into this conversation as we're kind of wrapping up here. So I want to go back to what I said I would go back to. What are some of those crazy scholarship myths that you guys have heard out there?
It's been a journey. I've had students walk into my office and, why am I going to apply for scholarships? We didn't get anything on the FAFSA. Oh, glad you asked. There are scholarships that are not need based. You don't have to prove that you have financial need to get scholarships. And then I've had students say, well, I'm not an all A student. Why am I going to apply for scholarships? Or lately, some students have been saying, well, I'm not a minority. Why am I going to apply for scholarships? So those are the 3 biggest scholarship myths that have jumped out at me in these last couple of months that we've been trying to debunk. What have you heard, Ashley?
I would say that sums it up. And so when I'm addressing those students, at this point in our year, we just last week, I had the students look up the cost of attendance for all the schools that they've applied to, because I feel like the student needs to understand the finances behind this, and why they also need to be working on these scholarships, because it's going to be a joint thing between student and parent to pull this together, in the end. And so I know parents are going to want to see that the student has done as much as they can on their side, right, to do this. And yes, anything that is open, then at that point we need to go for it, right? So it's, yes, maybe you don't have the need based criteria, but I see these other ones over here that don't have that, so I need to see that you're going after those, right? So just directing and making sure they are trying to do something. The San Antonio Area Foundation, great example of, they just need to put their information in. Some are need based, some are not. And so whenever it has openings, and the grades, that they need for those things tend to vary as well. We also have local scholarships that are looking for students who are not the top. So it's important for students to understand you don't know, necessarily what every single scholarship is wanting. And so if you meet the criteria for it, then you need to go for it.
One other thing to add is some students have expressed, I'm not a citizen, so I can't apply for scholarships. And not every scholarship has a citizenship requirement. And so if they need help kind of navigating through that, I think that's where we can come in. Other community stakeholders who want to help these students, that's where, we come in, and they'll ask their trusted adult, which is sometimes us, or teachers. And so we try to share that information with teachers. This scholarship doesn't have a citizenship requirement, making it like known. And so that's another myth that we're working to debunk.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. Those are always interesting conversations. So in a few minutes, I will ask you to share maybe your one piece of advice. If I'm a parent and I need to learn the one thing out of all of this conversation, what would it be? Before that, though, I wanted to ask you, Lucia, like, if I'm a parent with students who are not in the 12th grade, right? I'm not really in the weeds of the college application and enrollment process. What can I do now, both to look for scholarships, but also to increase my chances, right, of getting some of those scholarships?
For our families who don't have students who are seniors, what we can do now to prepare ourselves to be the best candidate that we can possibly be for a lot of these scholarships is I always encourage underclassmen to kind of keep an eye out. What scholarships do I think I qualify for, and can I kind of keep those in mind, or just look at these organizations and say, oh, I can apply for that then. But then there are also scholarships that you don't have to be a senior to apply for. There are scholarships that are open to anyone in the ninth or the 12th grade. There are scholarships that are open from middle school to 12th grade, and so it's not only for seniors. For some organizations, students can start applying now if they wanted to. And in SAISD with our college bound advisors, we also keep track of specific scholarships in our area and what we know their requirements to be, and they can just start working on thinking about those questions. What is this scholarship going to ask me? Can I start working on an essay? Can I have somebody read this essay? And working on grades. That's also really important. I want my students to finish strong. I want them to finish junior year strong so that we can finish senior year strong, so that we can have good grades to show people like, hey, look at my grades, if that's the kind of scholarship that we're trying to apply for also.
For my younger students, I don't emphasize necessarily searching for things that may be open to their grade level. It's really three things. I need you to have the best grades you possibly can. I really need you to own what you're learning, so that when you sit for these SATs and ACTs, that it is something that you do well on, because those are really where I see the scholarship return happen, is on grades and those test scores. For those of you who have younger students who can be putting in the time to make things, I guess, looking good for them when they're seniors. And then also get involved in your campus. If they don't have something you're interested, get involved in your community, because we need to be able to articulate what have you been doing with your time, what matters to you. And so we need to make sure those three things. I have my 9th through 11th graders really focus their energies on that, so that they're ready when we're here as seniors.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we have shared a lot of information today, and I'm happy that it will be recorded. And so if I'm a parent and I just want to listen to 5 minutes of this 1 hour, actually it's like more like 49 minutes. What is it? What is the one piece of advice that I can walk away today and be something I can use, right? Something I can really apply, whether I have a sixth grader, a fifth grader, or a 12th grader.
Um, I'm glad you're asking this. I just emailed senior parents today with what I needed them to do, because just continue to support and push your students. I'd say specifically, if you have a senior, find some way to organize. If you don't have a digital document like my scholarship tracker that they showed before, at my house, I would probably just tape a paper to the fridge or to my child's wall, and I need you to be showing me what you're working on for scholarships. So get organized and get on the same page and check in. What are they working on? What are they doing? Because senioritis is a real thing, and it just, this semester every year is hard, and yet it's when we need them to keep pushing in order to get these scholarships out there. So get on the same page and just do that gentle push and check in. And if you can get an organizer together, even if it's written on a piece of paper, try to certainly get together and do that so you can support them.
What I would want to really emphasize from this whole conversation is that one, there is money on the table, and we want our students to be able to find that. And two, parents or whoever our students' grown-ups are, we are here to help. It can be really overwhelming, and even if the parents or the students' grown-ups did go to college, like that may have been a minute ago, and the situation has changed, the processes have changed, and so you don't know what you don't know, and it is literally our jobs to know. And so we want to help you. We want to help you through this process, provide resources, opportunities, options. And the third thing I would say is just definitely the support. Parents, guardians, whoever our students' grown-ups are, listening in, tuning in, that support is just so invaluable for our students. And just kind of really the, hey, have you like Ms. Cash said, applying for scholarships. Have you looked at that? What are you doing? This is really exciting for you, for us. We're a team. Let's do it. It's really the student doing it, but we're a team. We're all here to help the student. And so those are the three things I would really like to, if nothing else, emphasize from today.
Thank you guys for that. And for my part, I just want to make sure you know, parents, that you've heard the terms college-bound advisors a lot today. The district has this specific personnel that only deals with the college enrollment process. We know it's difficult, we know it's nuanced, and we know it's even harder when families around the student have never actually done it. If they've never actually had the opportunity to go to college or any kind of higher education, like anything else that's new, feels confusing and potentially frustrating. And so the reason we have CBAs, for college bound advisors for short, it's because we understand that sometimes all of us need a helping hand, and we can't know everything. And so these folks like Ashley and Lucia are experts in the field of getting students to explore their post-secondary opportunities, whatever they want to do after high school, that they can help them guide through the navigation of what are the right clicks and right things to write and the websites to attend to and the websites to avoid, so that students have like limitless options after, right? Because that's sort of the game we play here. It's a game of options. I want to make sure you know that you can Google SAISD College and Career Readiness, and you should be able to get to our website where you can actually look up the directory of college bound advisors for the district. Each high school has their own sort of link to a college and career hub or to a college and career readiness site, where you are also able to find information about your particular CBA counselors, the counseling and advising staff. And so please visit us if you need us. And you can Google college and career military readiness. You can Google college bound advisor. Something should come up that gets you to the right place. You can also connect with our wonderful friends from the Family and Community Engagement Office, and they'll be able to redirect you to the right place. We hope this has been useful. We hope it's been a good use of your time. We know some of you may see this as a recording later, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us talk for 54 minutes now. And so thank you. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and we'll see you later.